And in general, I wish more people would lean on celebrating and supporting versus deriding and destroying.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
totally. I mean, why did all those deriding and destroying people get Elizabeth Holmes sent to prison for 10 years when all she wanted to do was revolutionize blood testing and make everyone's lives better? Why aren't people more supportive of things like this? Oh, yeah. That's right, that whole $10 billion fraud thing.
At this point, I think I know more about manufacturing than anyone currently alive on Earth.
I have developed a view in life to not second guess Elon Musk.
Odd. I've developed a view that whenever Musk makes some big, bold claim that he's going to completely revolutionize an industry by making it a 10, 100 times better, to not believe a single word of it.
We're going to make bricks out of the dirt from the tunnel and then sell the bricks. The tunnel could actually pay for itself with just bricks.
But Musk fans have this great universal get-out-of-jail-free card that excuses absolutely every fact-based argument that show that Musk is a vaporware salesman.
He drives resentment. Like he is a magnet for resentment.
Oh no, you're so right. I'm so resentful about being proven right about the boring loop or the Earth-to-Earth rocket transport or the Hyperloop. Oh no, I'm consumed with jealousy by the success of these projects.
Like his critics are the most miserable, like resentful people in the world. Like it's almost a perfect match of like the most idealized, technologist, of the century, coupled with like just his critics are just bitter as can be.
The greatest technologist of our time. Greatest fabulist, maybe. We're talking about the guy who thought he'd invented something new by giving a dumb 100-year-old idea a new name. And, of course, went on to build one of these hyperloops between Washington and Baltimore.
Elon Musk wants to take people from New York to Washington, D.C. in less than half an hour. He tweeted, the government has given him verbal approval to build an underground hyperloop from New York to D.C.
Elon Musk says a New York DC Hyperloop is coming. Elon Musk is the head of lots of companies.
No, that was all complete vaporware. The guy built a small-scale tube that rusted outside SpaceX headquarters for the best part of a decade before being cut in half to make way for a train before being torn up for scrap. Is this the greatest technologist of the century of which you speak? Or the greatest technologist who got a Tesla to drive from coast to coast in 2017 with no controls touch at any point?
Yeah, essentially November or December of this year, we should be able to go from, all the way from a parking lot in California to a parking lot in New York. No controls touched at any point during the entire journey.
Amazing.
And up to about 2022, it struggled to get across the car lot until they took some of their ultrasonic sensors off the car. Now it's not even capable of getting across the car lot.
I have developed a view in life to not second guess Elon Musk.
And this is how the owner's manual now reads. Smart Summon is designed and intended for use only in parking lots and driveways. Do not use Smart Summon on public roads. Smart Summon must only be used on paved surfaces. Smart Summon is a beta feature. You must continually monitor the vehicle and surroundings and stay prepared to take immediate action at any time. Smart Summon may not stop for objects, especially very low objects such as some curbs, and very high objects such as a shelf, and may not react at all to traffic.
Yeah, essentially November or December of this year, we should be able to go from, all the way from a parking lot in California to a parking lot in New York. No controls touched at any point during the entire journey.
Smart Summon does not recognize the direction of traffic, does not navigate around empty parking spaces, and may not anticipate crossing traffic.
I have developed a view in life to not second guess Elon Musk.
Or the greatest technologist who landed 2 starships on Mars in 2022. Is this the greatest technologist of the century of which you speak? Sports cars, trucks, Hyperloop, full self-driving, solar roof tiles, tunnels, battery swaps, Starship. take any of them and judge them on the results. And none of these things are a functioning business. But sure, the Musk fans can't argue on the facts because they know I'm right there. And they can't argue on the track record because they know I'm right there too. So what do you got left? Ah, of course.
Like his critics are the most miserable, like resentful people in the world. Like it's almost a perfect match.
Oh, isn't that cute? You're trying to salvage some pity points by claiming that I'm bitter, having been completely unable to defend Musk on either the technology or the track record. I'm almost tempted to let you have it out of pity.
Have pity! Pity! I have no understanding of the word.
Except, no, I'm going to burn you for that too. Mostly because you had it coming. I've been putting up with bullshit like this for years.
This can also be seen with all these YouTube channels that cater exactly to such a neo-Luddite audience. And since these channels attract technophobe people, quite often of a highly aggressive character.
Right, yeah, of course, I'm wrong because I'm bitter and resentful. Of course, for that, my bitter resentment would all be driving thorium-powered hover cars on solar roadways. Or what are the other gems that always get thrown my way? Ah, that's right, that I'm not an expert. That's not actually an argument. Or that I've never achieved anything while Musk made a car that could drive from coast to coast in America in 2017. I mean, this is just an example I came across from some 8 years ago, while dancing on the grave of the Hyperloop. You know, all those engineers and scientists at Tesla and SpaceX who helped Elon write the white paper. And the engineers and researchers on the various teams doing Hyperloop are like also legit scientists who went to school for years, right? The only difference is the SpaceX and Tesla teams have actually done something worthwhile with their time, as opposed to making YouTube videos about nothing. And if you're thinking the quality of the Musk fans' arguments has improved over the last 8 years or so, this was for like a few days ago from Warren Redledge. Funny to see the desperation of Thunderf00t last 7 videos about Elon. And you know what, Warren? That might actually almost pass as a yes and type criticism if it didn't come from a guy who makes essentially 100% of his videos about Elon Musk.
Hey, this is Warren Redlich. Welcome to my channel. I make videos about Tesla, SpaceX, and other Elon Musk related things.
And just so we're clear how grounded Warren here is in reality.
What if I told you that Elon Musk could make trillions of dollars by boring one set of tunnels connecting North America to Asia, and do it cheap and make life better for everyone in the world?
All he has to do is take the tunnel project that took him about 2 years to complete 1 mile and extend it another 6,000 miles and run a Hyperloop in it. Yeah, that sounds sensible.
You could ride by train from San Francisco to Beijing in a day and a half.
A day and a half? Elon's going to do that in a supersonic Hyperloop in like 6 hours.
Okay, that's utterly delusion, Warren. What else you got for me on how I'm wrong about the Hyperloop?
Again and again, we're seeing that behavior. Now, is it that he's an incel or is his audience involuntary celibates? What is the reason for we're seeing all this? At some point, we're going to get to where he starts going after Elon Musk. One of my theories is that Phil is an incel. Phil is a person who did not get along well in his own countries.
Yes, it's a classy and well thought out defense of the Boring Company from an Elon Musk fan.
So was he hiding out in Czechoslovakia because he couldn't cut it in America or the UK? Is he hiding out in Czechoslovakia because it's easier for him to pay prostitutes in Czechoslovakia?
You know what word keeps coming to me when I look at these Musk fans? What is it? Projection.
Like his critics are the most miserable, like resentful people in the world. Like it's almost a perfect match.
Is he hiding out in Czechoslovakia because it's easier for him to pay prostitutes in Czechoslovakia?
Yeah, truly this is a dizzyingly intellectual defense of the Boring Company. And on a side note, it would indeed be Impressive to hide out in a country called Czechoslovakia, seeing as there hasn't been a country called Czechoslovakia for the best part of 30 years. Hell, there hasn't been a country called Czechoslovakia this millennium. Anyway, where were we? Ah, yes, reality. A Hyperloop company that felt had nothing to do with Elon. Yeah, but Elon's Hyperloop was cut up and taken away for scrap metal. Hardly a ringing endorsement now. Misleading thumbnails and titles by a following that loves his lies. And the comments go on below. I wonder if Thunderf00t, herself is desperate. She has a following that loves his lies, so probably quite happy making a bit of cash from that audience. How does YouTube doesn't ban false information like this? If you post any video with any copyright, they instantly blocks it. I'm subscribed to his channel for entertainment. I believe like 5% of what he says. Wow, now that's a gullible moron. You know, in that he believes like 95% of the things that I bust are true. Spoiler alert, the Busted series has a 100% hit ratio.
I can imagine how much it hurts me to use the word infallible.
Oh, come on, nobody's infallible.
All right, then he's not infallible. It's just that up to now, he has never failed.
Seems like a very negative channel. A washed-up, old, tired YouTuber thrives on negativity of other people's success. Yeah, we'll come to that. Was brilliant about 10 years ago on religion, but fizzled out now. Sad. I've engaged with his followers a few times. He and they are idiots. It's a shame because Thunderf00t used to do some genuinely interesting scientific experiments and takedowns of crowdfunding scams. Odd, that's exactly what I still do. Unfortunately, he realized he could get more attention by simply lying about Elon and associated companies. Now he's just a worthless grifter. Well, let's start with almost the only bit of that that's true. Old.
Online video, anyone anywhere in the world can wake up one day with no fans, no followers, no friends, start a channel and reach anyone around the world. That's great. But because they're doing it all themselves and nobody's given it to them, there is definitely a natural arc. And that arc could be 3 to 5 years or 7 years for a big YouTuber. It could be 1 to 3 years for somebody on TikTok, on Instagram, or short form.
According to Social Blade, I created my account in 2006. That's what? Getting on for 18 years.
Very few people have started 17 years ago and are still relevant now.
And this is what my viewing figures look like now, which the best part of 18 years since this channel was started. If you just take that as a metric of relevancy, that's almost as good as they've ever been. And from this, the MUSK fans draw the conclusion of washed up, old, tired YouTuber. Odd, for the last 30 years, I also thought I'd been, a research scientist. Look, there's a very good reason why I almost never respond to this stuff. There is a hierarchy to the value of arguments. Eloquently summarized in the quip, great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. The irony being that the human mind is genetically geared up to the social stuff. You know, discussing people. There is a very good reason why the most popular talk show hosts are billionaires, whilst the top science communicators are maybe millionaires. Put simply, if I put up a video saying that the Hyperloop is stupid some 8 years ago, and the reply is, Thunderf00t is a jerk, well, you might be right. It might resonate with a lot of people. But fundamentally, you didn't address any of the arguments I made in my video, which is probably because they were right and probably a very good reason why the most well-funded Hyperloop company worth some $500 million went bankrupt about a decade later. What's more, these aren't mutually exclusive in that you can discuss, say, for instance, why the loop is stupid or the implementation of it is stupid, and how the only valid conclusion is that the guy pushing it is a vaporware salesman. But notice it, that the whole vaporware salesman isn't actually just some insult, it's a conclusion. Sometimes who people are is relevant. However, if your entire argument starts with just negatively speculating about someone's character, not so much.
Because he thinks he's better than Elon Musk. In fact, what Phil does is he thinks he's better than everyone. That's why he thinks he should be the person that you listen to. But in reality, he's not. He's a fucking loser.
And you'll get even more generic criticisms than that, like, oh, he might be very smart, but he can still be wrong. Well, no shit, Sherlock. You know what would be more convincing than saying he could be wrong would be saying why he's wrong. I've debunked Nobel Prize winners on this channel, on the subject that they won their Nobel Prize about. And, spoiler, that's going to happen again by the end of this video. Anyone can be wrong. Question is, do you have a good reason for saying that they're wrong?
This is from the guy that claims that he's some kind of, amazing scientist, when in reality, he's actually a part-time scientist with no patents, and he spends most of his time writing papers that 99.999% of the population will never read or ever care about.
Meanwhile, the same Musk fans are like, unfortunately, he realized he could get more attention by simply lying about Elon and associated companies. Now he's just a worthless grifter.
And he spends most of his time writing papers that of the population will never read or ever care about.
Yes, which I've been doing for the last 30 years. And of course, because people who go into research always do it for the fame, the glory, the giant stacks of cash, and the ladies. Oh, hang on, wait, that's right. No, researchers don't get any of that. Yes, a grifter for the clicks, and at the same time, someone who spends most of his time writing papers that almost no one will ever read or care about. Fine, let's have a peek behind the curtain from this YouTuber who's been around for some 18 years and doing research for some 30 years. Incidentally, I started my PhD under a guy who went on to win a Nobel Prize. Now, you might be thinking, that's just some absolutely shameless bragging there. No, this story goes in a very, very different direction. In fact, I'll give you the punchline right now. This guy goes on to selling the most crazy snake oil branded with Nobel. It's just almost one of the most unbelievable stories you will ever hear. And what makes it even more interesting is it ties in both with my research career and my YouTube channel. Now, when I did my PhD, it was on making these molecular machine things. Problem was that was clearly a Hyperloop type sales pitch and didn't really fool anyone, but fundamentally that's not really a killer in research. Because research by its fundamental nature, exploring the unknown, there are inherent uncertainties that come with that. And if you get some grant money and get something interesting done with it, no harm, no foul. Now you might be thinking that's a stupid way to do science and a frivolous waste of money. Well, maybe it's just no one's worked out a better way of doing research yet. Now, you remember when I busted that high-temperature superconductor? Guess how that turned out. I mentioned that there were fields where the sales pitch was basically unchanged for some 30 years. Like fullerene chemistry, high-temperature superconductors, ionic liquids, and supramolecular chemistry. They're all fields like that. Yeah, I did my PhD in something that, even at the time, I knew the sales pitch for it was bullshit. I mean, sure, I had a good salesman who was very successful at getting money for it, but I knew, and pretty much everyone else brave enough to express an opinion, he didn't take criticism that well, said as much. But I didn't really care. I enjoyed doing the research. The basic sales pitch was, and still is, that if you make molecules tie around each other, you can make molecular machines. Things that you can get information out of and store. The thing is that was clearly bullshit in that these molecules were quite big, didn't store that much information, and there was no real size advantage over, say, existing silicon-based chips or the such like. Stuff that's been a functioning technology for the best part of a century. A point that can be emphasized in that some 30 years of research on this sort of field, and all of the molecular machines remain at the concept level. And if you're wondering what machines that store information at a concept level looks like, we're talking about things like an acid solution stores the information that it's acid, or a basic solution stores the information that it's basic. The applications for the molecular machines was basically making oversized, overcomplicated pH indicators. Now, full disclosure, this was at the tail end of the old English unions type thing, and the proto-Nobel Prize winner was the head of department and wanted to be lean and dynamic and decisive and fire a load of people. All the things he'd learned from his extensive collaborations with industry. It basically went exactly like this.
Nobody's getting fired yet. That's why we're having everyone write out a job description mapping out in detail how they contribute.
You know, basically making people reapply for their jobs and see who is downsizable.
That way management can assess who's valuable
and who's expendable.
In short, he wanted to fire a load of people. I didn't want them to lose their jobs. Now, some 30 years later, looking back, having worked in many cultures and many universities, I actually have more sympathy with the decisions that you're going to make there, but maybe not so much with the way he did it. Yeah, but there's always this balance between too much job security and people get complacent, not enough job security, or too little job security and everyone spends their time worrying about their next job evaluation and whose throat they have to cut to get ahead. It was probably shifted at the time towards too much job security. However, the head of department was rather nonplussed by a firebrand agitator, who then rather predictably terminated his part in my PhD, claiming that it was because of my poor work. But that was bullshit. Not that I greatly cared anyway, because I had 2 supervisors and just finished my PhD with the other one. Of course, you could believe the proto-Nobel laureate that my work was so terrible that he had to fire me after the first year, but then somehow, miraculously, that same terrible student suddenly went on to finish his PhD in a mere 2.5 years after he said that, and become a pretty decent scientist after that. Or, more likely, he knew he couldn't fire me for being a political agitator. Oh yeah, you think I'm a jerk now? You should have seen me in my prime. So he just made up some bullshit excuse about my work being bad and fired me for that. Yeah, it wasn't for nothing that I was sort of a political agitator against this guy. Looking back, if I'd have been a real jerk, I would have taken it through the appeals procedure, just to be evil. But the simple reality, beyond being a breadwinner and bringing in lots of money, he really wasn't actually that much use as a scientist. He was an administrator. The only thing that I would have gotten for staying there would be the association of saying that I worked in a big lab with a big man. And forever have the question mark whether I was actually a good scientist or just riding on the coattails of a big man. So at this point you might be thinking, well, okay, that's kind of a novelty that you got fired by a guy who went on to win a Nobel Prize. Kind of interesting, I guess. But no, this gets way more fun. So I wandered off into the world and did research for another 30 odd years and started a YouTube channel which has been running for almost 20 years. And one of the things I randomly debunked during that time was this really stupid idea called powdered alcohol. I just randomly mentioned it in passing. Maybe because they were partial into the idea of using this supramolecular chemistry as a way to store solid alcohol, which is a really great idea until you actually just trivially show that a maxi pad is actually a much better way of storing alcohol than this powdered alcohol. Well, for this I went over to whiskey, and it just took shot after shot. Indeed, had we been doing a drinking contest, this maxi pad would have had me under the table. Had this been pure alcohol, by the time I'd finished, it would have been about 80% by weight alcohol. Now that was really sourced. Plus, with solid alcohol, if you want to make a cocktail, all you got to do is squeeze to get your pure alcohol back and mix it with whatever you want. Then some 10 years after this, the now Nobel Prize winner, it turns out, is coming to give a lecture at the Institute. So I'm like, okay, let's see if they've done anything more sophisticated than overly complicated pH indicators. So I decided to poke my head in the back of the gallery and watch probably a full 10 minutes of him giving the exact same talk that I'd heard some 30 years ago. You know, I'd passively kept up with what they were doing in the field, but honestly, it was just seemed like another one of these fields like the high temperature superconductors, where they were always promising they would change everything. But fundamentally, it was the exact same sales pitch that I'd heard 30 years ago. He then went on to applications, and I brightened up for a bit, thinking, wow, he's actually got some applications for this. And the first application he listed was powdered alcohol, one of the dumbest ideas that I busted a decade ago. At which point I just rolled my eyes and quietly slipped out the back. The feedback on the rest of the lecture I got from other members of my group who I told none of this to yet, and they described basically the rest of the lecture as some sort of almost surreal extended commercial for some stupidly overpriced anti-aging snake oil, and how proud he was that he had personally chosen the name of this brand new skin cream to be as close to Nobel Prize as possible. You know, Nobel Panacea. To use a Nobel Prize to market scammy anti-aging creams, that's pretty cheap. But then to actually go on and boast about that in a lecture to an academic institute, yeah, let's just say I've not met anyone yet who spoke highly of his talk. And if you're thinking, really? Well, here he is in one of his commercials, actually working out how he's going to try and integrate Nobel Prize into his bullshit anti-aging cream. And when I say stupidly overpriced, we're talking $300 for 8 doses. For something that is in all likelihood operationally indistinguishable. You know, that if you were just to give people blindly this skin cream or that skin cream and say, how much do you think these cost? They would basically say they are the same thing. You think I'm crazy? Well, this is their great claims. The Nobel Panacea Skincare makes some serious claims about their results and backs it up with clinical results. Do they? For instance, after an 8-week trial, which would have cost the average person, several $1,000s of testing Nobel Panacea Prime Radiance Serum, 92% of 50 women felt they had smoother skin. That is 92% of the people, which is about what you would have expected if you'd have given 50 women some standard moisturizer. But of course, why not just do the most convincing thing and show us the before and after shots of using several $1,000s of literal snake oil anti-aging cream versus moisturizer sold by the gallon at the dollar store. Just so we're clear at the level of snake oil that we're on, anti-aging creams are predominantly moisturizer-based skincare products marketed with unproven claims of making the consumer look younger by reducing, masking, or preventing signs of aging. Blah, blah, blah. In the United States, anti-aging products are commonly marketed with false claims. Our cruelty-free anti-aging skincare is backed by breakthrough science, making it the best anti-aging skincare in the luxury skincare market, and have deemed to be among various scams on consumers.
And that gift was something to take up and to run with. And you know, in science, when you do make a discovery, you've got to think about how that discovery could be put to good use and how humankind could benefit from it.
Or this from the Federal Trade Commission. Despite claims about pills and treatments leading to a fountain of youth, there is nothing that you can buy that has been proven to slow or reverse the aging process. And many of the companies selling these lotions and creams and supplements don't have sufficient scientific evidence to show they work.
Nobel Panacea means universal cure based on high moral standards.
I look forward to the wonderful things that I think can happen that will help women to feel beautiful in terms of using a product that will beat everything else that they may have used before.
Yeah, citation needed. And if you're wondering why he would speak so highly of powdered alcohol, it's because they basically use the same waste product from the food industry. That would be cyclodextrins. And what's that Stoddard's writing on the paper there?
It is very green for several reasons. To start off with, all the building blocks that are used to make the organic molecular vessels are based on starch.
Yeah, the cyclodextrins in powdered alcohol could be outperformed by a maxi pad. Yeah, it's a bit of a head scratcher for me too, to see how someone could turn the Nobel Prize into Brain Force's answer to what happens when powdered alcohol meets anti-aging cream scams.
The OMVs determine the slow release, and that slow release, we reckon, is at least 10 times slower than the average cosmetic that's on the market at the moment.
Right, because having magic beans released slowly will somehow magically stop the aging process.
If you look good and if you feel good, inside you are uplifted and inspired.
Oh yeah, the inspiration of selling magic bean anti-aging cream for $2,000.
It's a way to think beautifully about yourself and about others.
Yeah, I shit you not, they legitimately have on their website that their secret ingredient is integrity.
But the most important thing is that there is a cavity in which most of the active ingredients will find a home.
Yeah, right, the active ingredients, those things, yes, yeah, of course, the magic beans that you're going to tell people will make them younger.
The active ingredients that we add to the OMVs are green. It couldn't be more green than anything else that you could dream of.
Oh, yes, of course, green because it comes from plants. And of course, everything that comes from plants is good and natural, right? Like ricin. Or maybe he's just mentioning green lots in the hope that people will think it's good for the environment, like low carbon footprint. Until they actually start thinking, and no, this quantities of skin cream are always so small that it will be operationally insignificant as a portion of carbon footprint. You know, this would fall into the category of sky diamonds, which I busted, or wearable carbon. Those were sold as green things as well.
It couldn't be more green than anything else that you could dream of.
Oh, I assure you, I've debunked plenty of greener stuff than this on this channel. Now, doubtless the Musk fans will look at this and say, "Ha! You got fired by a guy who went on to get a Nobel Prize and did something useful with his life, whereas what do you ever do?" Actually, I'm pretty comfortable with the way things turned out, in that if someone were to offer me, well, you can have a Nobel Prize, but you're going to have to spend the next 30 years of your life basically spouting the exact same bullshit and then end up predating on the neuroses of aging women to sell them skin cream. And if I were to go all the way down the rabbit hole, this video would be long. And it's long already. Look, the point of this video was meant to be people who don't have any really good arguments tend to come up with vapid generic shit like living rent-free in your head, or you're obsessed, or you might be an expert in X, but you still might be wrong. Which, even if every single point they're making is true, doesn't address a single argument that was made. The only thing that matters is, do you have good reasons for your position? With a standoff second being, well, yeah, I don't have time to get into the arguments or the details, so let's just take a quick look at the track record of who's been right on these things over the years and who hasn't. There was actually an entire second half to this video where I went over what I've done over the last 30 years and just how little my scientific knowledge is defined by what I did for some 3 years, some 30 years ago. Now, addressing the very common red herring that, after all, your PhD was in supramolecular polymer chemistry, so you could never come into a conclusion as profound as Hyperloop impossible because Earth bumpy. It's also why I prefer the moniker some guy on the internet rather than Dr. Phil. Because forget doctor, I could be a Nobel Prize winner and still be promoting something that is complete bullshit. It's also generally true that people who insist on titles tend to be trying to sell you something. Now, it's sort of true just by rising to this crap, you're giving the hyenas what they want, which is changing the subject to anything other than the self-evident bullshit they're trying to avoid. But yeah, I figure once in a while, it's worth turning around and kicking a jackal. But whatever, this video is already way too long. So if you want to know about the Boring research that I've done for the last 30 or so years, all good, and how I actually started this YouTube channel some 18 years ago. Meanwhile, I figure I need a celebratory event to celebrate 3 billionaires and 2 Nobel Prize winners busted. And that's today's video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing. And if you really like the work of this channel, you can support it directly through Patreon. And thanks for watching.